I loved A Quiet Place, and I was honestly a bit bummed when the sequel was announced. I was afraid that the magic would be lost or that the crazy goodness would be minimized by what felt like it was going to be a money grab. Well, A Quiet Place Part 2 is now here. So is the sequel worth checking out? Following the events at home, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats lurking beyond the sand path. If you saw the trailer, you know that we get a glimpse at how this whole thing starts in the movie. There's a crazy scene with John Krasinski in a town and Emily Blunt in a car racing down a street as chaos erupts around them. The movie shows us how it begins, but it doesn't linger there. We're taken on a journey that picks up right where the first movie left off. So I mentioned how I was skeptical and even bummed when a sequel was announced, but after hearing some interviews from Krasinski about how he was only going to do this if he could make it good, I did begin to get more intrigued. Honestly, this is going to be an easy review to give because I absolutely loved the film. It's not often that a sequel can be just as good, if not better, than the original. So first, the tension in this is just absolutely insane. From almost the get-go, the story grabs us and then amps up the energy. It just steps on the gas and then it doesn't let up. It's crazy to think at how this story, that really just follows a family for a couple of days, is able to instill terror into the audience. And there were more than a few times that I don't think I breathed. And some of that is because of the situations that the characters were in, but also because of the sound design. Once again, the sound design is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it moves seamlessly between soundtrack and sound effects, or even just natural sounds, to the silence or that muffled, almost underwater sound where noise barely penetrates. And I love that it moves back and forth to give us the perspective of Millie's character and then how the other characters are experiencing it. And there are also times where we hear stifled breath and just slight vocal tremors as a character is trying to remain undetected from the monsters when they had just have, that supersonic hearing. And during these times, I held my breath. I mean, I was so immersed in the story that it was like I was afraid my breathing would cause the monsters to hear me or the characters on the screen. I love how the narrative sets up a false sense of safety in some key moments. We watch our characters go through something horrifying or even just treacherous to arrive at a place of refuge, but we know that that safety can only last for so long. And this sets up uneasy feelings and increases the anxiety as every minute passes. Now we have the return of Emily Blunt as the mom in this, and she is still absolutely wonderful to watch. She has this fearless determination to her that just comes from necessity, but she's also strong. And I love to watch her not only lead her kids away from danger, but into the unknown, which then is a danger in and itself. And we also have a new addition of Cillian Murphy, and I loved what he brought to the screen. He's gruff, tired, I mean, he's basically just fed up with everything, but somehow he's still managing to survive and not give up. He has both some heartbreaking and stand up and applaud type moments, and there's so much emotion that he brings just from his eyes or his trembling words. Now, as great as both of them are, the real standouts are Noah Jupe and Millicent Simmons. Jupe still has that terrified and almost paralyzed look to him where his eyes can, kind of bug out and he sort of just vibrates with fear. We get to see, though, that the timidness that he displays is actually part of his makeup. It's not just a result of the monster invasion. He's so convincing in what he goes through, too. There is this very visceral moment with his character, and I felt what he was going through because of how he played the scene. I also really liked his character progression. I mean, in the first movie, we watched Krasinski as his dad just instill some wisdom and guidance to the young man. And here we get to see some of that take hold and then him embrace the bravery when he needs to. Okay, so the total star of this movie is Millie Simmons. She kills it. There is a fierceness to her character, and I just love the fact that she is thinking so far ahead and is so driven to make everything work. Now, I'd argue that this is her movie. I mean, she commands the screen every moment that she's on it, and I love how she isn't a cowering flower. I mean, even if she's terrified, she has the determination to continue on, and then she goes for it. As the family goes away from their home and into the unknown, there are a couple of times that felt like we could venture into Cormac McCarthy's The Road territory. The landscape is bleak, and because it's been a little over a year and a half or a little under a year and a half since the invasion, the setting is a mix of destruction and overgrowth. And what's heard in the movie trailer, Cillian Murphy mentions that the people now aren't typically the ones that you want to meet. The times have changed them for the worse. Now, the special effects in this are just as good as they were in the first movie. The creature design is still crazy, and those monsters are just as terrifying as they were before. And now I think they might even be a little bit more so because we know what they're capable of, and the likelihood of seeing more just increases as the family leaves their home. And I love the quest that the characters are on also. They're obviously leaving their destroyed home for some semblance of safety. The unknown is a terrifying prospect, and you feel that from the moment the family takes their first step off that white sand that they lay down to dampen sound. Rarely did this story let us have a reprieve from the anxiety and tension. There's also a sequence that is filled with heart-pounding urgency. And once the movie finished, our muscles just began to relax. We had unknowingly been tensing just about the entire time. Okay, I know. So no movie is perfect, right? There's got to be something that I had an issue with, even if it's a mild complaint. Yeah, my issue with the movie is that it's only 97 minutes long. I could have gone at least 30 more minutes, as long as the story could support it. Now, honestly, I'm not sure my heart could withstand an additional 30 minutes of that terrifying anxiety, but I am willing to give it a go. Seriously, I adored this movie. Watching the kids come into their own and drive the story forward was just wonderful. The sound design was immersive and enveloping, and the set design was also spectacular to see. It felt like we had been transported to a land that had been neglected out of necessity in order to survive, but that survival was also very sketchy. This was a completely anxiety-ridden thrill ride that has a huge family focus, but it also manages to bring some incredible horror as well. And this might just be better than its predecessor. Okay, if it's not better, it's certainly equal. So if you're able, this is one to see on the big screen at a theater. And then again when it's on demand, and then to buy once it's on 4K. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and a lot of violence. But surprisingly, there's not a lot of gore. I give A Quiet Place Part 2 5 out of 5 couches. So do you plan on seeing this? Have you been looking forward to it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.